And when you get down to doing this, what's funny is, and I get down to doing this, and I'm looking with my bare hands, I'm looking for anything that looks like a sharp spot, anything that looks like it's going to put a ding in that wing after all that work we've done. And having a variety of jars with different radiuses to just kerf that off, very nice if you can just happen to have. And you know, it's actually free if you can save a bunch of jars and make a little collection of them in various sizes. Wrap some of that Bernie Trent sandpaper around it. But what we really don't want, I don't want the wing touching anything. I want it floating in midair. And then I'll fill in the gaps, but I don't want it hitting a hard spot, because then when I go to make that edge, that's a spot I got to remove then anyway, so I may as well remove it now and get it as accurate as reasonable here. Look, we got a nice joint up in the front now. But a little bit of a free floating there would be to my advantage right now. And again, I don't care if this takes, you know, I started off thinking this is going to take the better part of the day. I don't care if it takes 2 or 3 days. Especially if I have plenty of those big New Orleans donuts to eat for breakfast tomorrow. Oh my God, I'm going to get fat again. Again. See, that always implies that I'm not fat now. You notice how I've kind of snuck that in there? And here's what I'm talking about. Jars, pens, anything with a radius. Right now, you can get that radius right in there. And it cleans it up real nice. And when you're done, you take the sandpaper off and you still have a jar. And it didn't cost you a penny. Something that always appeals to modelers is when something's free or very inexpensive. What am I talking about? It appeals to me. But lets me put more money toward my new Ducati, which Bernie Trent is graciously going to try to get me a discount, get it down to $71,000 maybe. I don't know. They're only bringing in 150, and Tom Cruise got the first one. I'm sure Eli Manning's going to get one. They give Eli Manning for the Super Bowl. They give him a car that isn't even out yet. I mean, you can't even. What's wrong with that picture? Why don't they give him a Ducati? Okay, it looks like we have that fit just a little bit better. Now, no matter how I do this, it's back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I still need to make sure I'm right on the money there. And at the same time, of course, I don't have the center line transposed out on the fuse yet. But I can see right here I'm getting close. And every time I work on this, I'm getting closer than the time before. So it's just a question of spending, well, it's going to be a couple more hours, but getting this an exact fit, so all of those lines are going to line up at the same time. And I don't care. The good thing is I don't care how long this takes, because once I get this lined up and I get that front bulkhead in and make up the back bulkheads, from that point on we're locked in, and we should have, from that point on we're building a cosmetic aeroplane. All of the things that really matter will already be in place. Well, I gave this my best shot, but this is not going to get done in one session, but we are very close. And I just think it's more important. We have obviously some errands to do, and we have to vote today, so I'll get back to this and work on this evening. Karen and I are back from voting and obviously from eating about half of that cake. But I had no idea. See, this is the nice thing about, I guess, having friends all over the world. Or friends like Raymond now has added his name to our list of, listen to this, we have this New Orleans DVD. I gotta make this softer, in fact. And it's actually nice music. Karen even liked it. We listened to it over lunch. But I didn't know the tradition of the king cakes. And there's a little baby inside the cake. And when we were done, I read this and I said, well, I didn't find the baby. And Karen started cutting up the cake. So we have some for when the kids come over. And there's a little baby in there, a little doll. And the tradition is that whoever gets that piece of cake has to buy a king cake and bring it next year. So obviously here, I'm stuck. When I go to Texas, I'm gonna have to buy one of these king cakes. It was really nice though. That was really something special. And again, Karen and I really did. I'm probably a diabetic from how much I ate, but it was delicious, believe me. And also, I wouldn't want to forget this. Now, the New Orleans colors are purple, gold, and green. And I was just thinking how appropriate this would be for Dave Midgley when I see him, that he could wear the beads. I can't wear these while I'm working on a plane, but I'm going to make sure at some appropriate time these get mailed up to Dave with his DVDs, because they match his paint job. In fact, we could call him New Orleans Dave. For some reason, he's attracted to those colors. I'm not sure, maybe he's from New Orleans. But anyway, we need to stop fantasizing about things and we need to get ready. We got to do the final fit now, and I've got a couple hours, and I want this session to be that I want that final fit. I didn't want to rush through it in the beginning of the day, but I want to really knuckle down and get this to fit like a glove. And Joe's fits so well that I really, if I don't make this good, he'll know about it. I know he'll know about it. And that really is a nice DVD. I got to admit, you know, and everybody knows. In the beginning of a day, I put 5 DVDs in my player and just hit random and walk away. But this is nice music. And usually, you know, because Karen's daughter is a musician, I should say. I don't know if musician's the right word. We like to think that we have a variety of tastes in music. This is actually pretty nice. Anyway, make some nice listening in the car on our way down to Texas, too. Now from this point on in this, I've just identified a couple of spots that are just higher than I think they should be, and we're almost ready. I mean, we're closing in on the time that we'll be able to, and this is the piece I made for sanding out the scoop, the side scoop on a Testarossa, which I found a lot of other uses for. But it's this final fit, it's this step right now that just takes forever. And of course the complexity that it adds is because you have dihedral involved, and it's the back and forth, trying to be real careful not to put dings and dents in it. And now I've got this fit so well. Watch, it just snaps in. It goes click and it's in. Wow. Even I'm impressed with that. Now I need to find my center line. Find my center line up front. See, I'm on center here. Ooh, that's nice. Now I need to see, again, I've been sneaking up on this, getting this really, I want to be within the thickness of a pen line when this is all over with. And one of the things I always have to do, that the fit is so tight now, I have to put some weight on that, pull it forward. And what happens, because of the dihedral, if you don't get the wing in the center, see, because it's got a V, as you move it out, the center lines get all crazy. So it is way more important to get this accurate than if we had a straight plane. A straight plane would be a vertical and a horizontal line like a gun sight. This is a V and a gun sight. Just a little more difficult. And John Pothier's tool, this little tool, absolutely perfect. Oh my God. Joe Adamusca would be so proud of me. There goes my weight sliding off the wing. And it is so important. Now once this is, what this tells me too is that I've got the V and the fuselage just right. I'm not high on one side or low on the other side. And that's critical, because imagine if the plane's flying around and something's, the slightest little thing that's crooked on this plane is going to stand out, I think, more than on a straight wing plane. Now it's the best of all worlds right now, is I'm right on the money on the front of the wing, and the wing is lower than it should be. I need to raise the wing probably a 32nd of an inch to get it where I think the center line should be. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to take out, in other words, if I walk around here, if I do this seamlessly, up here I know I'm on center, so I just need to find that center and then transpose it back to the back of the wing. Because I know right now, and see, this is where we had trouble with Joe. See where the original, where that little dent in the wood is? We had the center line there. But I don't care about that little dent in the wood. What I care about is that it's up off the table, that exact amount. And I've used John Pothier's tool to establish that. And see how handy that tool is? That really sets it right on the money. And these are the two things that have to be exactly the same. They have to be right on the money. Now once that's right on the money, and I'm right on that center line, that's perfect. Then I can vary the back up and down, well, 32nd of an inch, just put a shim in there while I glue that bulkhead on. But I need to get the center line on there now. And I know, from looking at this, I know exactly where the center line should be. Now I can make sure my gauge is right on the money on both dots. I can just lay a ruler across there and connect the dots. Now what I did to make it even a little better, I used the point of this to put two little dimples right in the side of the wood. Put a pin inside, and now I can rest the ruler on there when I draw the line. Now because I don't have a helper, I taped the ruler in place just to make sure that this was going to be as accurate as I suspect it will be. But again, I can check it now with my gauge before I go do the other side. And as you just move the gauge down, and right there is where it has to be exactly the same as this side. So now just repeat the same thing on the other side. Once we get one of these, then I can accurately go back and forth, and I'm going to work off of that center line. So now we've got an accurate, very accurate center line, both sides. We know that from the table up, all we need to do now is line up the center of the horn, center line in the front of the wing, our vertical bar, and then measure our clearance in the back so that we're on center in the back. And the rest of this is just going to be skim cutting these surfaces so I have enough clearance for a piece of 64th plywood in there. Now I take all the preliminary fits and I can see that I'm low. I'm low by 32nd of an inch the most on that side. I need to look at this side. I'm a little bit low on this side, but that's perfect. Now what I'm going to do to make up for this, I'm just going to make some shims that go under here to raise the back of the wing up so I'm right on the money. Then those shims can stay in there. In fact, I should make them out of hardwood or plywood or something. 64th plywood would be good. Because the front of the wing is perfect. And that'll mean I want to get this angle in here before I put that glue seam up there. And there's several other things I want to check. I want to check that I'm 90 degrees in here, or that I'm equal. Even if I'm not 90, I'm equal. I want to check that I'm right on the center, and I've got a center line. Let's see if I can click the center line on the horn, center line on here. And it seems like, wow, that's a lot of work to get all these center lines. But you know what? When you get all these center lines lined up, it's amazing when you're done. From this point on, once it's lined up perfectly, this goes so quickly, it's unbelievable. And we'll be in the catbird seat here very soon. Now to get this as accurate as I think I can get it, one of the things I'm going to try to do here, take some little tiny pieces of 64th plywood. I think it's going to need about 2 of them, but I don't know for sure yet. And what I thought I could try to do, again, we can go back and forth. I can use pieces of tape. I can use, well, actually anything that's a shim. But I thought this would give me a, well, give me a real heads up on how much this has to go. And I just want to see if I know I need 2 pieces of 64th. Well, I could always put a piece of 32nd too, and I don't want to put them too close to where I'm going to be working here, because I don't want the glue to run under there. Another little consideration. With all this shimming and everything, when the final result, when the plane is finished, or somewhere down the road you paint it. You don't get things warping in some direction that you haven't anticipated. And I think any time you spend, if you spend an hour lining stuff up, you basically are buying several hours that you don't have to fool around trimming a plane. Now let's see, we should be getting really close here. We're getting near that where we're within a pencil line. And again, just keep in mind how I am ultimately fussy. Before I tack this in place, and I have my weight here. I had to use something heavier. This is the only can. This can of epoxy was heavy, just to stabilize it, and that looks pretty good. That looks real good, in fact. And now I need to just take a look. It's got to come up a little bit more on that side. A little bit more on that side. And as I come around to see the front, front's right on the money. So I know I need to put even more of a shim in there. And what I did, I made up some thicker shims out of balsa wood. And this is going to be back and forth until I'm convinced that this is as good as I can get it. Center lined, rest in place. And I can clearly remember times that I've tried to do this and get it done in some given short amount of time. And all of those planes, not even worth having. You're just pretty much wasting your time when you do that. Well, I've said this before, we're just getting closer and closer and closer. Each time I do this, we're getting closer. And I can start to see, if I start to look this way, that I want that line to be right in the middle of the horn. And of course the lines in the front like a gun sight lined up. And I'm going to keep shaving and making shims and basically till I get this that I'm happy with it. Now in the course of trying to get this exact, and I mean exact, what I've had to do here is glue on a little piece of balsa shim, and I've had to reorient the line, and that adjusted the wing. Now what happened is, and this is important to understand, if you slide this wing forward, the front end goes up, back goes down. If you slide it back, because we're basically in a curve here. And what was happening was I needed too much of a shim in the back, not the same in the front, and it was getting to be out of kilter. And what really solved the problem, I just redrew the center line at a lower line, and again, this is what we had to do to Joe's. I'm surprised I didn't figure this out earlier. I put a red center line on there, and this little shim, a piece of 32nd balsa, or a 16th I should say, and now I can just, by just touching that with sandpaper, that's going to keep the wing from moving a little bit forward, a little bit back, a little bit forward, a little bit back, and should give me a really good fit. And it should make up for the fact that I'm going to need a lot of shimming in here. Now with that little shim in there, what that allows is the wing to slide back and forth, and it makes lining this up. Now I'm on the red line on everything. It just made it line up just a whole lot easier. And so that may be one of the tricks we want to use in the future. Now the next thing is to get this tack glued in place. See, I wanted to have a gap between everything, but what I don't want to have is a 1/4 inch gap that I have to fill with balsa. That's still a little bit of a gap. Anyway, this alignment, as I've said before, more involved than any other I've ever done because of the dihedral. Because of the center line, that center line, I want it right on the money. And again, I can just basically fine-tune this. And then the next step, once I'm happy with everything, just going to put a little thick CA, just a no thin CA. Oh, we got a no take apart plane. Just enough to hold that in place while we work on the back of the wing. And I'll get this jigged up until all of these center lines are going to line up. And now I have infinite control just by getting the wing closer or further from the bulkhead I can rock it until they're both level. And this may not be the way you want to do it to start with, because you can't make big changes this way. You can't change it 1/4 of an inch, but you can change it 1/64. And just fine-tuning that shim, boy, that's the trick of the century. Just being able to rock that way and just get it right to where, and it doesn't matter if they're both high or both low. You just move the center line as long as you're parallel to the table. But that's a lot easier in my feeling than recutting that shape or filling that shape in with, I don't know, aeropoxy light or scrap wood or whatever. And I think we are really pretty much ready to put this, at least tack it, get the front tacked in. Now, as I'm doing the final shim in here, I took a little coffee break and phone rang, and it was Dave Mitchell. And he said our canopies are ready. And so very soon we're going to be doing the cockpit detail on this. And boy, I just thought I'd rest up a minute here thinking about how I want to do that cockpit detail. And we're going to be writing an article, a very detailed article for Control Line World, and I'm going to be shooting pictures and video, of course, and make a dedicated either DVD or set of DVDs out of the cockpit area. And I know Joe will be happy to hear that we got cockpits coming. Alright, everything looks about as accurate as I can possibly make it. We're ready to get that front bulkhead tacked to the wing. And one final thing we wanted to equalize, and I made this gauge. This is a gauge that goes up against the fuselage side and follows the curve of the horn so that I can get this within a pencil line and just verify. And I was very careful when I made this that the center line is right on the wing, is on the center of the fuselage, but this is just a redundant double check and we're good to go. But having a little gauge like this, very handy. Also, a lot of times I'll make a gauge for the front of the wing that takes into account both angles just to verify it. Okay, what I did, I just tacked up the bulkhead there. We're lined up really, really well here. This really absorbed the better part of a day, but boy was it worth it. And we're right on the red lines, just about everywhere. Right on the red lines at the back. And the next step on this is going to be make up the two back bulkheads, which I need to make up from light ply. And I need to, on my case, they'll be different than Joe's. I need to make clearance for this horn adjuster at the same time. So first thing I'll do is try to make a little pattern out of balsa wood. Keep that, and obviously, other than that horn adjuster, they'll be very similar to the way Joe's went in. Boy, that worked out nice. I'll tell you, when you do a job and you really pay the price early on, well, later on it's a joy working on a project. Now with the front tacked, the next thing is I need to get a pattern made, and I just want to get a very, very accurate fit there so I can make the pattern. I'll make it oval length and trim it out later, but I need to leave clearance at the bottom so that when the wing comes up I have some clearance there. It doesn't bump right into the former. So I'm leaving probably a 1/16 of an inch of clearance there. Now I'll need to figure out just how much to trim off the back, and I'll have a pattern. Now from the scrap balsa pattern I made up this pattern, giving me plenty of clearance, but what I need to look at now is the bulkhead that's going to attach to the wing. I need to make this another copy of this, leaving them oversized, and I'll trim them off later. I want to leave it oversized on the bottom too, because it's going to have to connect to the wing. Pretty much the same exact piece. And I'm not going to put the blind nuts in at this time, because what I want to do is glue this piece to the wing, line everything up, and then drill a blind nuts both at the same time. Now our back bulkhead has to get extended down a good 1/4 of an inch, because this is the part that's actually going to attach to the wing. And these will ultimately be pressed together, but this one is going to attach to the wing. Now I have the bulkhead that's going to be in the fuselage. It's trimmed back, and I have to make a permanent glue joint. It's tacked in there now, but I want to get this perfectly flat because the other part is going to rest up against it. I want to make sure that's a flat surface. Yeah, it's good to know we will not have issues getting the canopies, and it's obviously because of the article in Control Line World. I wanted to have some extra time to work on it, of course, which looks like now we'll have. Okay, plenty of clearance. We're tacked in the front. Now I need to get the bigger of the two pieces, which is... Alright, Wendy, you lost the piece. Here you go. And this one, I just need to get the angle on it till it slides down. Let's see, it's about a 30-degree angle. Because I want to get it the angle at the bottom of the wing. I want to make it nice and even if I can. Even though this isn't the primary structural part, this is one that's going to hold everything in alignment while we do the rest of the work. Now there's a little bit of an angle on it, and I can see the angle is up this way. And every part from this part on is just a fit. A fit within a fit within a fit. And we can lower that, oh, I'm guessing 1/16 of an inch. And this is the kind of stuff, there's just no end to the little fits. That's why I try to do this when I'm caffeined up, so to speak. And every time I put this in, I take a couple more swipes, try to get it exactly to be a nice tight fit. The less glue I can use here to make a tight seam, the better. But this is where all that work renovating houses and doing sheetrock fits on old crooked house walls really pays off. Now I can see any hard spots here. I can see this needs to go down. Actually, it's not too bad. But even though these little adjustments, and I know somebody's going to say, well, I never did sheetrock work. Believe me, you don't know what you're missing. There's a funny story with John Kennedy. He was by some coal miners, and they were, I guess he was looking for votes or something, and the guy said to John Kennedy, said, I don't know what it's like to be a coal miner. It must be a tough job. And the guy says, John, Mr. President, you didn't miss a thing. Maybe that's the truth with sheetrock work. Anyway, John DeTavio did give me a lot of good tricks for doing sheetrock work. Now this piece here, we're going to have to tack in. I can see the problem here is, and it's a very simple thing, we're going to have to tack this in, because this then, as I slide this up and down, it fine-tunes, and we're right on the money now, but I don't want to drill the holes until I know everything is right where we want it. And actually this can, we can tack this in right now. No thin CA. Thin CA and take-apart planes, when you're making take-apart features that you want to keep take-apart features, not a good choice. And we'll just let that sit there, and potentially, once that kicks off, we'll be in great shape. Now one final check before we do any drilling at all. We are right on the red line. We are right on the red line. Okay, now that clamp holds the two bulkheads together. We know we have all our alignment in place. With that held together, I can drill and put the blind nuts in for that bulkhead. And needless to say, before I put these blind nuts in, I want a drop of oil on them. I don't want to have that old trick of, oh, some CA got in there, oh geez. I'm so glad to hear about the canopies. We were worried because, of course, Dave has had a career change, and I guess that's the right way to say it. We're afraid maybe the career change would not include the ultimate Spitfire canopy here. But we'll find out. And Dave's going to be coming down soon. He's going to be doing some for his new business, some new work. And I make a prediction that he'll be very successful because, like me, he's a very inventive guy. I'll take full credit for that. Anyway, let's suck these blind nuts up. And then we got to start fitting those sides, which, like it or not, that's the next step. And the only real difference here is Joe doesn't have this post to deal with. But you still need this hole so you can get in and connect and disconnect the push rod when you want to take the plane apart, either with a wheel collar or a solder joint. Now we now have this part bolted in place, except for one thing. We could take it out and these formers would stay on it. There's only one problem. It'd really be flimsy. Now by having this part connecting it, that makes it rigid enough and holds it in alignment enough that we can take it out of the wing and then make permanent glue joints. So far everything here is just really tacked in place. Now we'll ultimately be reinforcing back here with some triangle stock. We don't want to do it right now because that CA could wick its way down under the wing. That's the reason for just getting enough glue on things that were in one piece like this. So this worked out fine. Now this angle, if you look at the top here, is ultimately going to get block sanded down flat. I won't worry about that right now. That's a cosmetic thing. Don't need to deal with that right now. But what I would like to do is get the two sides that we cut off and see what kind of a fit we have on them. Sometimes they fit real nice. Sometimes it's your lucky day. Now while we were doing Joe's fuse, we came up with a nice little way of doing this. Because we have to cut this piece out. What we did, we put a piece on top of this that's just there temporarily so we can fit this in one piece. Now, if I were to just cut this out, we would have to put it in two pieces and then you'd kind of lose this edge. So I need to go get a piece of scrap and just add that lip to the top of this. So I'll actually add to both of them and then cut out that part that will be the wing cutout. We don't really need anything here but a decent edge to work off. This piece will not become part of the model, so we don't need to make it any fancier than we have to. I need to just set this up and get a decent tack glue joint. Now I always hear people saying, oh wow, you know, I watch that video and wow, there's 1,000 steps to make and take apart model. Oh, it's too much work. And you know what? Right now, on a day like today, there are a lot of steps, but somewhere very, very shortly down the road, we're going to be laughing all the way to the bank, and this will be ready to tack glue up. Now, if you've watched the way I've had this evolve, this technique of doing these take-apart chips, the thing that always impresses me is every time you use a part, there's jigs, fixtures, this, that, but it all follows through in sequence. And it really is not that difficult to do the second time. It's that first time. And this is one of my goals with the DVDs, is to make it reasonable or easy or both. Now let's see, we need to take 1/8 of an inch there. I'll leave the line on because I know this is going to be something I want to fine tune. Okay, now we have this, and this piece supports it in one piece while we do the fine tuning to get this to drop in place. Now the first time I fit this, I realize I'm off this piece right here because I've added the extension. I need to put the same rough extension on the front of this to even this out. And that of course won't be a big deal, but what I'll do is, because I'm doing it this way, I'll put the grain going straight up and down, just add a little extra strength that way. Now whenever you have an angled part, and let me just explain, you have a part that's like a funnel. What's going to happen is, as I start removing this edge, that part is just going to slide down. So I only really have to remove this little piece, this little extra piece that I put on. And once I take a little bit of that material off, that part is just going to drop in, and hopefully I've got, well, I guess we're going to find out, a pretty nice fit to the wing there. And once that's glued in place, I can trim off the top and work on the other side. But I'm not making any of these things, any of the reinforcements or any of the really totally permanent glue seams, because if there's something we have to adjust when this is over and we're all done, I want to see all 4 of those reference lines perfect. Now what's happened is, because I've moved apart, I've moved that wing down a little bit, the two choices I have is I can fill some of this gap in, or I can just make up another part. And in our case, this looks like it's just going to be easier to make another part up. So I'm going to trace that out on another piece of balsa wood. And that'll pretty much, see, if I drop the part more and more as I'm doing, what's going to happen, I'm going to run out of wood up here and still have some gap. And I'd rather not do that. It's just, the lesser of two evils here is just to make up another part. But the good news is I just use this for a pattern, trace it out on a new piece of wood, and I'll be all set. Now the good news is this made a really nice fit around the wing. Let's see, when we get the fit right, what's happening, we're short up here. So again, what'll happen is it'll also give me a little bit of more material up the top. So by using this for a pattern, this will just make one less problem, and this is the easiest way I know of to deal with this. Now I'm just adding that material to the new piece, and it certainly will make it, and what I'll do is, actually when I'm done, I'll lay the ruler across there and trim it off, so that may make it even easier. You can think about that. And whenever I make a pattern similar to this, I'd always suggest a good way to do it is leave the ink line on, and then I can just sand off the ink line as necessary. An ink line is a good amount to use as a way of, well, fine tuning, I guess is the right word. And I'll leave that ink line on, knowing ahead of time that we're going to have to do a little fine tuning on that, but certainly that's not a big problem. And I guess even this would be a good place to leave an ink line on here. Anyway, this is not the way that Joe's worked out, but again, because I've moved that wing slightly, and it doesn't, the problem is with this, that we didn't anticipate in the very beginning, we did not take into account the dihedral. And it's the dihedral that makes this just a little bit different. Now, this will be our new part. And we'll fine-tune this, of course. Where's my fine-tune this just a little bit. Boy, I could remember making the first take-apart plane and trying to figure a lot of this out. I mean, I had some way that I envisioned doing it, and Casminato was pretty good about showing me his plane, but I said, well, how do you do that before that, and this before this, and how do you leave that jig on and leave that wood on? And this part that I'm making right now is one of the things it looks real easy when you see one at the field all done. Or it's all painted and everything, but then when you go to do it, you find out, wow, was a couple steps in there they did not exactly include. Anyway, now it's this new piece that we're hopefully going to be able to fit right on there. Now, much better fit than the other part, of course, right off the bat here. Now, let's see, we got a little high spot there, a little low spot here. We need to cut a little bit of this off. It's got to drop down in there. We need to make up the doubler still. See, I wanted to use this for a pattern to come up with the doubler shape. Every time you go to fit this, it just gets a little bit nicer, a little bit tighter. And I think we're at the point now where we can use this for a pattern. And what I need to do is figure out, because I need to put a line on this, where this fuselage top is going to wind up and where this is going to wind up. I need to connect the dots, and that's going to be where this gets trimmed off ultimately, because I want to lay out that 16th plywood doubler right now. Now what's unusual, and this almost never happens, is I can use the same one on both sides. Usually they're just a little bit different. These aren't. It's almost a press fit, a good fit down there. So I may as well at this point in time just create another side. I don't even need to worry about the other part. I can just use this one and duplicate it. That's going to be a time saving. Now again, especially with we luck out once a year like this, with a duplicate part, it's always a good idea, period, to just leave the ink line on. That is such a, I don't know, such a key part of getting nice fits on things. And the neat thing is, it works all the time. It just gives you that last little amount that you can fine tune in there. And of course, anytime you're doing this kind of stuff, new blades constantly, I guess would be a good investment. See, we don't have to go through this again with the part and the pattern and this and that. And we've just saved ourselves some, well, some amount of time anyway. I'm going to leave the line on, try to hold the blade 90 degrees. I don't remember if Joe's one part fit both sides, but when they do, it's just free lunch. It's not a big deal either way. Okay, final fit time. Now I'm trying to remember, maybe I'd have to look at the video. If this is a key part, when I make the doubler up, there's a very good chance, and you glue the doubler on it, you make either two lefts or two rights, and then you always wind up with that extra fuselage part. Well, we'll see if we can avoid doing that. It would be very nice. Now again, I've got the line on there, but I'm doing all my fits by just taking the line off with the sandpaper. Let's see what kind of fits we have going with us. Thinking of all the fits that go into Dave Midgley's kayak kit. Now we're really getting close here. Don't want to take too much off. I've got just a little bit. Yeah, building that kayak looked like that was a real labor of love too. And Karen truly is excited about going kayaking with the Midgleys next year. Okay, here we go. That fits. That fits. Now we just have to drop that down. We need to take a mount off of the back. And see what happens here is With the line on, the part doesn't exactly fit the way it should. With the line off, that's going to drop it right down into maybe one or two more little swipes of the sandpaper. Oh yeah. Oh Joe. That's looking good, baby. That's looking good. I bet Joe would be impressed with that. I guess I can look at this right now and use this. Oh Joe, that is so good. One or two more swipes and we're in. Building a kayak 101. Let's see how that drops down. Oh yeah. Oh yes. Now see, I'm getting a little too fussy here. I'm getting into where it's a half a pencil line. Right here where my finger is, it's a little bit of a hard spot. Anytime you get a decent fit, it's just one less thing you have to fill with glue or epoxy or something. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I'm impressed. That really is pretty good. Now what I need to do, I need to know exactly, because this is going to create my doubler, where this is, and this doubler is going to go on this side. So I'll put a little mark so I know that that doubler goes on that side, but I need to know the height of the fuselage, and then I can lay out the doubler. Now I want the doubler to come back to at least, and I'm trying to trace this out, to the point where, and let's make sure I got this, where the bell crank resides. Let me lay this out because I can see it better from this angle. Okay, we got it pretty close here. That's going to be our doubler shape for this one side. Now the idea of that is I'll run a former across here, and when I pull test the plane, I'll pretty much know right here is where this will go right over the bell crank bolt, and I'll have a way of using that to stiffen up the body that I get a decent grip on it to pull the plane for the pull test. So now I know that's the fuselage side. The 16th plywood is necessary to build up the thickness that I need, because the fuselage side of course has a 16th plywood, and we've never run the plywood back into this part because we left this part stayed on the fuselage just to keep good integrity while we were building. Now we're done with it. Now we want to reinforce this, and I'll cut this out, glue it to this side, and that should bring me out exactly the right thickness. Okay, we're coming down a home stretch here for the final fit. And it looks definitely acceptable. I'm looking for a high spot, and I see one. There's my big jar. And I'll just put my right here. And it's endless, these fits. And you just accept the fact that it's going to take a little time. Okay, that looks exactly like what I'd be happy with. Well, I just need to know where the glue is going to go. And we're just going to put the slightest amount of glue on here, just thick CA to hold it together. And you can see where that glue is going to go. Now the problem is, I don't want to have a ton of extra glue in there. And this is just to hold it in place. We're not gluing down here at all. Hold this in place until we can take this out of the fuselage. And this should be enough to hold it together. It's really just a tack joint. We're trying not to create a one-piece airplane right now. Now usually the dust that's created from doing all these fits kicks off the glue pretty well. Yeah, it kicked off pretty well. Now the other thing I wanted to check, and I can do that right now, I can just put a slight amount of glue on this inside seam, since this can't go anywhere. That'll just stiffen this up a little bit. But again, I'm being real conservative here. And when I make up the little triplers, there'll be little balsa blocks in here that hold everything, just to spread the footprint out, the glue footprint. Yeah, that's going to be fine. And it's just there to hold things in position. Just the slightest little amount of glue. Every time I think of some of those old times that I used to, it just didn't sink in the very beginning how easy it is to make a plane, get glue where you don't want glue, and then of course you've got a problem. Anyway, that looks like we'll just let that dry, but it's already kicking off. That fit worked out just really nice. Now the only thing left here, and I think the only thing left I'm going to be able to get done before I quit tonight, because I hear dinner already clanking away up there. And this was a long night. If I can get the other fuse side, I'll do that off camera. Get the other one on there and get it just tack glued in place. Tomorrow we'll pick this up. But making a new fuselage sides looked like a really a good investment on this, in this case. Well, we really toughed this one out, and I really like the way that fits. Now I'm not going to push it, because tomorrow I'll make a list up of the things I want to do tomorrow. As I'm thinking about them, tomorrow I'll reinforce all these joints with triangles, reinforce back here, get a permanent glue seam on both sides. But a lot of that work has to be done. We have to take the wing out. I don't want to get any thin CA anywhere around there right now. I'll feel a lot better doing that work when the wing is out of the fuselage. But what I'm going to try to do, first thing tomorrow morning, trim off those fuselage sides. That'll be one thing. The reinforcing. And what I'll do, I'll make a little list up of what I want to get done the next time we get a session in. This morning we're up before the birds, and when we beat the birds, that usually means we're going to get a lot done today. Get a nice early start. It's going to be another rainy day, so sooner we can get started. I really want to get this get this step finished, that I can take the wing in and out of the fuselage whenever I want. I always look at this photo on the way down to the shop just to give me a little inspiration. Well, you know what it is, with the rain out there today, just looking around, I'm glad we got all this silver on. But we would not be getting a lot of luck with the paint if we had waited to paint this. So getting a little bit ahead has really served us well. Okay, now the first thing I want to do here, I want to get a ruler, lay a ruler across the top here and trim these pieces off. Because what I need to do is I want to take the wing out of the fuselage as the first thing, and then I want to get triangle stock in here. But I don't want the grain going front to back or this way. I want the grain in the triangle stock going corner to corner, And that's what adds a lot of strength without adding a lot of weight. And of course the same thing up here, same thing up here, same thing on any of the corners. I want to always have the corners filled with triangle stock, and then I'm going to try to build a glue fillet up on the inside of this. So at least I made it, I have a little plan, but the first thing is to trim, while it's still in the fuselage, trim this off with one of the longer rulers. And that ruler gives me a little guide to work against. Now I was thinking I'll use this ruler as a guide. I'm not sure if this is going to be how I want to do this. I want to leave just enough material over that I can run my big sanding block down here and get a final cut. See, this was actually in the way, and that's the problem with, by building all those fillets and everything, I'd like to have this out of the way. And this will leave me on just about the thickness of the ruler of extra material. Now if I can just get the last little bit off the sanding block. See, it's hitting the plywood, so I need to know how much I can take off here. Once this is nice and even, we'll be ready to take this out. Now I can use the smooth side to dress this off even a little better. Now of course our new part doesn't have the curve sanded in yet, and that's okay. We've got the straight line. Now the next step on this is just going to be to loosen all the bolts and take the wing out of the fuselage. Now every time I get to this point and it's time to pull this apart, sometimes a little glue gets in there. No, I guess we're clean. Now the next thing I have to do before I even go any further, while this is sitting exactly as it is, I need to make up a fake bulkhead and a fake bulkhead and make up that handle that goes in here. Because while I have it confined in this area, that handle is going to hold this in position for the whole rest of the construction and finishing. Now it's easy enough to make a template of this. And we obviously have to make both sides. And it doesn't have to be any special shape. In fact, it can be inside this by, just make it that. Take a piece of scrap plywood, and this is just scrap stuff that I have laying around. And I can see the imprint in the soft plywood. Now these don't have to be fancy, and obviously we want to make this as sturdy as possible, because this really does hold. It holds this in complete alignment. It doesn't let it do this or this or this. Doesn't let it bend this way. And I really don't even remember who the first one. I remember doing the first one of these take-aparts, and somebody, it might have been Paul Winter, but I don't know. I don't really remember. Showed me the idea of having a handle there. And I said, wow, what a great idea. I have to steal that idea. And I made the piece up, and it worked perfectly. Yeah, I think it was Paul Winter. But it was one of the European people. Now, obviously, I'll do the same thing up in the front here. Make the same part. In fact, let's see if the bolts are close. No, they're not. It's never easy. See, none of this ever is the way you would hope it would be. But if you just run the pen in there, it eventually picks up the holes, and we only need 2. And then we have this one also. And I can get these made up, drilled. And then I need to look for something, piece of wood or something that's going to go across this. Piece of scrap balsa wood, preferably some of that 20-pound wood we always have extra of in the shop. Now, I learned early on in making this the first time, spend a little time and make it, get all the edges cleaned up, because it's going to be a lot of sharp edges every time you're painting it or sanding it. And it's actually a tool you need. It also serves another purpose. And on the Novanta repair, I found out real quick how useful that tool is when you have to do a repair. Because the fuselage was broken in half. So by putting it back in the jig, I was able to get that joint. Well, you go look at the Novanta and you get some idea of how useful that tool was. Now, I don't know if I got to cut longer bolts here. That's the next issue on this, is just to see if the bolts are long enough. It's nice if you don't have to cut longer bolts. And the other side I need to of course, put blind nuts in. Yeah, they'll be fine. Alright, you go back and look at the old Novanta, it's broken right in half, right about where the canopy was. But that tool, and during the repair, that tool was absolutely useful. I had it sitting right in my box with the spare parts, all the assembly jigs for the Novanta. It really worked out nice. That was so well worth the time. So I'll spend a little time and get this as nice as possible, so there's no sharp edges around here while I'm working on putting all of these parts together, actually. And that stays there, and without that part, until you put the shells on, this is really a vulnerable part. So this is one of the things it isn't apparent right in the beginning how useful it is. Somewhere down the road you realize it's a really good tool. Let's see, after I put this first piece in, I see I made myself a little bit of a problem here, because when I put this bulkhead in, and I'm going to have a hatch here, and I'm going to have this piece, of course, attached permanently, this is going to be in my way. So what I'm going to do is just go down before I even build the part, take off maybe a 1/4 of an inch and angle this slightly forward. And again, that's just, I didn't think of that when I put this together. I really don't want to have this bottom piece which will be permanently on the plane, and when I go to sand it, this is always going to be in my way. So just by knocking that down, that'll make it just one little step better. Okay, I think see the way this lip works out? This will be a lot better, and I can also get my sanding block in there and finish the edges when it comes time to doing that. These little things that you don't think of along the way, but it's amazing how quick you figure them out when you have to. But I want to make this, and the idea of doing this is when you put this together, there's no stress in it. You're not forcing it or twisting it. You want it just sitting, and it's sitting right in the exact location that the wing dropped in. So we're taking one part out as if the wing was a jig, and this part now is the jig, but it'll hold a wing in this position. Now I may have to do the same thing with this one, as I can see. Yep, see, so I'm going to trim some off the top of this too. You know what I don't want to have is a sharp edge here. So what I'm going to do is just take a couple little washers for this side. I don't want the bolts sticking out of the blind nuts. Before I glue them in, don't put any glue on there. I want to be sure I don't want to cut up shorter bolts, because these are only going to be usable for this, and I can then use the same bolts as I'm actually using there. I don't have to be constantly switching bolts every time I take the wing in and out of the body, of which there'll be plenty of times it's going in and out. So I'll put a few washers behind this until that's nice and smooth there, and then I'll make sure I don't have any sharp edges along here, and then I'll go and fit the bar that's going to go across the side, from side to side. Now I know this sounds like a little insignificant thing to have these bolts not sticking out, but believe me, I learned the hard way, and it seems like I have a penchant for learning everything the hard way. That we're going to have many hours, even the hours buffing the plane, and I don't want any rough edges here. And I also didn't even account for the fact that I want to be able to get in and sand that area. Ultimately, no sharp edges. Okay, I'm ready to fit up that piece that's going to go back to back here. And the washers look like they worked out perfectly here. Now what's funny, I have the two other pieces, and I thought I had a piece of this ringmaster leading edge, which was just the right size and shape. And I started digging, looking for it, and realized I used it up to make the second piece. But I guess the answer here is, and another thing, if I had a broomstick I could cut up. A broomstick may be nice too. But you really want to have a comfortable feel for that. That really is important. I got a beautiful piece of scrap here. Hate to even use it up. It's a really good piece of wood, but it's exactly the right size. So what I'll do, I'll make this a little bit oversized. And then just sand well, I'll have to carve and sand in the shape, but that won't matter. And I'll make it plenty oversized. Let's see if we get a good fit here. Oh, actually not too bad. A little less of an angle there, and I think we'll be fine. And then I'm going to carve this, get that it's comfortable in my hand. No, I'm just looking to see if I've got a nice... See, I don't want to fit that I force this down. I want it to just drop into position. I want it to be on center. I don't want to have these angles crazy. That looks okay. And now I can just round this off a little bit. Yeah, round it off would probably be better. It seems like this might be a little overkill. Yeah, well, it's comfortable. We're going to be working. This is a tool I'm going to have in my hands for probably another, well, maybe more than 100 hours. So to spend 10 or 15 minutes making it comfortable to hold and and strong, of course, be well worth it in my opinion. Now, gluing this in, I'm only going to use the thick CA to tack it in place. Then I'm going to take it apart and put thin CA on this joint Sounds like I'm afraid I might get some CA down and I am. Down in, can you imagine you have a plane where you can't, got to saw the handle off or something. All these little overkills. It's like putting the oil on a blind nuts. Let's try to get it centered. And no pressure on it. Yeah, can you imagine? I'm just thinking, embarrassing moments in the world of stunt. You go to, you glue the handle in place. Now, I don't want any pressure. I don't want it exerting a force. I want it to just be sitting there without exerting a force. That looks pretty good. As soon as this is dried up, I'll pull it apart and then make a permanent joint. Now with that handle in my hand, now I know I have all the angles set right. I can just soak this whole thing in thin CA, make a permanent joint, sand off anything that looks like a rough edge. Again, no sharp edges, no hard edges. Now I'll get this put back in place. Make sure none of the bolts, none of these edges are sticking out. Again, I always count this as an investment in time, because this little part, believe it or not, is part of building a take-apart model. And I can imagine people that try to build without this, how vulnerable that fuselage is at from time to time. A little part well worth making. And very relatively easy and straightforward from scrap material. And once this is all put back together, we'll be ready to pull the fuselage off the table. But again, I want to make sure when I do this that I'm not creating some kind of a stress. I think this is going to be fine. And the washers worked out perfectly here. Actually, that is really a key part to any take-apart plane. That's really something not to underestimate. So that certainly worked out really well. And the next step, just going to take a brand new blade, cut the fuselage off the table. We're done with the little jig. Boy, I always feel good whenever I reach another little milestone like this. This is really one of the things. Now, the thing I have to do next is do all little reinforcements on the bulkheads, and that's critical because I need to make up some triangle stock with the grain going corner to corner. Let me just explain what I'm trying to do. And at least we've got one more thing off the list here that all I need to do is the reinforcements, and then I need to look at those flap fillets. And I always constantly update this list on a regular basis, of course. Now whenever you have any kind of a box shape, and this is old free flight technology, it's really to your advantage to put little gussets like such. Now, if you just take balsa and the grain is going this way, this joint tends not to be as good as it can because the wood has more strength in one dimension than the other. The ideal thing is to get the grain going in this direction. And so I'm going to hand select out a piece of wood that has nice straight grain. And what I'm going to do is strip off a piece that's square. And then by hand cut and trim it down so I have the grain going in the direction I want. I don't want to have the grain going, and I certainly don't want it going this way. This would be the worst scenario. This would be totally weak. This is the best scenario. If you can get, even if it's a gusset on a wing rib, grain going, you're trying to connect the corners. Whenever you do gusseting, you're trying to connect the corners. So to peel out a piece of wood now and try to strip that out, that's the next step, and then I need to get that installed onto those bulkheads. Now, this gets a little tricky to figure out, but since we only need the length, I know the grain is going in this direction, I know it's going in this direction. But what I need to do is, I need to get a 90-degree piece out of here, and I'll make it oversized. I'm going to make it bigger than what I think it has to be to start with. But again, the grain is side to side on this. And then I can block sand this in to be exactly what I want. And that key thing is the side to side grain. Because without that, it's probably, and I don't know the percentage, but it's a whole lot weaker. And see how that grain is going corner to corner. That's really going to hopefully add some reinforcement into these parts. And if I need longer, then this is a 1-inch piece. If I need an 1 1/4 inches, I'll add another piece to the top and just keep laminating them on. So the first area I need to fit in one of these triangle pieces. And all these have to be hand fit, and I've got to loosen the bolt up. I got to make shorter bolts for this. I've got to get the angle just right. The first thing is to get the bolts shorter. Before we even start this, because we're going to have glue around blind nuts, always a deadly situation. I'll re-oil the blind nuts, which I've already oiled, but I want to make sure they stay oiled. So now with that no part of the blind nut sticking out, I'll have to do the same thing to the other side eventually, but I can fit this piece right in there. Now as I pre-fit it up, I need to take obviously 2 of them, one on top of the other, but I also need to make a little clearance for that blind nut. So I'm getting a good bond. I'm just relieving a little piece off the back of the blind nut. Now the second one, just like every other one, needs to be hand fit. There's always a little bit of trimming and fitting to be done. And once that's glued in, and I'll trim this off of course, but I can put it in oversize. Needs just a little bit more trimming. Now each one of these fits is critical. Now I want to press this up against the blind nut and try to take an impression, like a dental impression I guess, and there's my dental impression. And I can see I just need to relieve. I can take a Dremel and just relieve that, and that's going to let this sit much tighter into the corner. Now of course this will all get done with thick CA, and once I take these pieces off, then I'll redo the joints, saturate them with thin CA, but for right now this will be a thick CA joint. And I just want to mark how far down the glue has to go. I'll just make trimming it off easier later. All these are little reinforcements. You think of all the things that are probably important, this holding these bulkheads in is one of the things I've always really been careful about, getting good tight fits, good glue joints, making sure I don't have any compromise on those joints. Now once this dries up, obviously I'll do exactly the same to the other side. As soon as that glue dries, come back and trim these both off, and this one side will be done. And I try to do this without using kicker so I don't get any of that big white popcorny stuff coming up. And by buying the glue from Brodak, what I get is, and I always use Brodak glue, it's always fresh. It's not 100 years old when you get it because he sells so much of it. Unlike maybe other places where it sits on a shelf for a year and it's out of code by the time you get it. Now it's as simple as this. The next step on this is trim this off. I'll do the other one off camera and then we'll move on to the next step. To getting the second one done, this is amazing how many things we've used this. Yeah, this is a SIG landing gear block and I have worn out so many pieces of sandpaper, but how convenient it is. I've just found a lot of little uses for it. Now this part is only installed here with thick CA. What I have to do is take the handle out now. It's actually good for even doing this. I have to take the handle out and then I want to soak this part with thin CA. I want to soak all the joints and edges and everything. But for sure I don't want to do it with our good old handle in place. Now here's a good little tip. Whenever I'm going to use CA around blind nuts, I put the bolts in with a little drop of oil on the end of each one. Hopefully that'll help. But the thin CA will wick its way down. It'll also, I can see it cooking off right now. I'll do each angle, get some inside from all the angles possible. This is one of the critical areas. This joint here is a critical joint because you're transferring all the torque of the wing, the engine. A lot of force is going through there. In fact, I'd say this joint is just as important as the one up in the front. Now what I want to do here Now what I did, I put 3 or 4 coats of thin CA in there and really soaked that area. And I want to even make it nice and smooth. The reason for the CA not only is to increase the strength of the joint, but because this part will not be accessible. Once we seal this up, if some oil happens to get in the plane from through the fillet where the horn is or something, I don't want that oil wicking its way up here and ruining that joint. So sealing it with thin CA, or if you're not going to seal it with thin CA, a couple of coats of dope would probably be a good idea right now, but we got plenty of CA on there. That's got a good coating of thin CA and that will seal it. Now just the way we triangulated this bulkhead, the next thing I want to do, I want to get all 4 corners on this. And they're all inside corners, all going to be very similar. And then where that bulkhead joins the wing, I want to reinforce that. So I guess the next step on this, well, I'll do the bottom of the wing first. We need to do the triangulation on the bottom and a triangulation on the top of the wing. And I'll get the table completely padded for that so we don't put any unnecessary dings in the wing. Now before I put the fuselage off to the side here, here's another little tip. Anytime I'm not working on a fuselage, anytime it's just sitting around, or anytime dope is drying, fiberglass, glue, anything, I want that bar in place. That maintains the integrity of the whole fuselage while we're doing work on other things like the wing. And I've found, even if you took the plane apart while you were doing like the Novanta repair, I would leave that in every minute that the wing isn't in place. Because a take-apart plane, when this is not in place, is really prone to warping and vulnerable and obviously not as strong as a glue-together one-piece plane. But pretty much from this point on, this is about the point in the build where we're going to start making up time. Because we've paid all the price for these take-apart features, most of the price. And from this point on, the finishing and everything else usually goes, it's a joy to work on a plane when it's in pieces. Not in one piece bumping into you. Now the first step here, and it's a rough one, I want to get this down to fit right up against the wing, so I need to take into account that angle. That's why I made all these oversized, of course. And I can pretty much slice this off roughly, just get a rough idea of what this size is going to be. Now I can pick that angle up. Let's see how I can do this conveniently. This is going to go in that side, and I can pick this angle, trying to figure out which would be the easiest way. It wouldn't matter which side it's on. When I get this side, now I can transpose that angle out, and it's going to be about, oh, I'm going to guess, and I'll just cut a piece until I figure it out, because it's going to go in there, of course. Let's see how that works. Now I've got that angle on it because I'm trying to connect three planes. Two of them are 90. In fact, this one is off a little bit. That's tight down there, and I can take this material off. That'll end right there, and that's okay. And I need to pretty much connect the dots here. And these little pieces, they take a long time to get the fits and angles and everything the way I want it, but when they're done, this angle here is not right now. And each one requires a little bit of hand fitting, but in the end, you wind up with a lot less glue and a lot less weight and a stronger joint all at the same time. And see, in this corner, we already have a glue fillet in that corner, so we got to make so it gets a nice tight fit. Oh yeah. Building a kayak. This is I'm sure exactly what people that build wood boats, kayaks, guitars. Now that's as good of a fit as I think we're going to get. In fact, I'm not going to quit yet. I know I can get it a little bit better. And because today turned out to be pretty productive, I'm not in a mood to compromise ever, but today more than ever. Okay, that looks like we've got it. Whoop. And as much time as I've spent getting this in place, it seems like it's a lot of time, but I know we'll get a much better joint than if I rushed through this in some way, compromised it. Again, the thing to do here is to get the joint with thick CA, let it harden, get all the pieces in, and I want plenty of CA on that. Now I need to press it in position because I want a tight fit. I want all that glue to ooze out, and I don't want to use any kicker. And the secret to all this stuff is to get fresh CA, not to use stuff up that's a year old, and that just makes the whole building process a pain. Now the next piece, of course, I'll make a piece up here, but with the same thing in mind. And I'll cut, let's see, I guess the easiest way to do this would be to leave a hole for the bolt and washer here. Or maybe what I'll do, and I'll have to think how I'm going to do this, I'll make the piece up and then drill through this side so I can get the bolt in there, and I still have, well, another thing I could do, maybe it's easier, I just put a thinner reinforcement here. Yeah, I think because I don't need to attach the wing, I can put this piece, just thinner material. Or after thinking about a couple of different ways of doing it, that looked like it was going to be the easiest way, so I can get, because I have to get in at the bolt and washer, may have to take a little material off there. Now what I'll have to do, I'm just repeat this same process on the other side. Once I get the other side done, I'll be ready to move on to the next step. And once that's soaked with thin CA, that's going to have tremendous strength. Now if this were a pipe model, I'd be thinking maybe I'd want a glass around there or something, because the oil from the pipe and whatever is going to get in there. But this ship is just going to have a little hatch here. I don't think it'll be prone to soaking up oil in there. Well, again, these are the things we're going to find out. what I did, I put a thick CA fillet inside for now. Tomorrow we'll start on the front parts, and then we have to flip it over and make the little piece that goes on the top. But this has been a real productive day, and we do have errands other than building today, so I'm really happy that we got this much done. This morning our friend Enzo the Rooster. Enzo highly recommends getting up early and getting some work done because it's raining again. Oh, am I glad we got that painting done when we did. One gloomy day after another here, hardly even any sun or anything. Oh, but we'll be in the shop, and that Javalia coffee will be warm as can be this morning. So as I get ready to plan out the day's work, I get a box in the mail, early morning delivery, and this is from one of John Cafaro's friends named Olbert, who I donated some of my old Lionel trains to their cause, and they were gracious enough to send me a little building, and we're going to find a spot for this on the layout, needless to say. It's very nice, very nicely weathered and detailed. Look at this, even got... Now, Bill Zimmer, funny, Bill Zimmer, when I sent him a video of the layout, he was critical right away. The first thing he said, not enough garbage cans on the layout. Well, Bill, this ought to help. And boy, thank you very much. Look how nicely detailed this is. I love well-detailed and weathered things like this. Get a little radioactive, a little flammable liquid things. Very, very nice. And we will, we will treasure that. In fact, I'm going to look around, and I think, but I'm not sure, Arnie Haber has a whole satchel of stuff that we were trying to sell on eBay, and we just never got around to it. I may have another contribution to their layout. They got a large basement layout, 30 foot long, much bigger than my layout. But look at how nice this building is. Boy, that's really beautiful. And thank you very much. That starts my day off with a bang. That's almost as good as getting a bunch of Spitfire pictures from Rich Walbridge. I haven't really decided exactly where to put this, because I need to do a little landscaping around it, but it certainly looks like it's a perfect match. Boy, that really looks great. Hey, and thank you very much, and we're going to see if we can find some other stuff to donate to your railroad. Since we don't really use the old Lionel stuff, I'm glad you could use it. What a nice weathering job, too. Alright, we're back in the shop, and I've got my little list of projects, steps I need to do. Last night we got this kind of sorted out. Now I need to do the same thing up here, is make a reinforcement here in this area. I'd like to try to carve one block. I'm going to see if I can carve a block that goes almost right up to the blind nuts. Now to get the idea would be to get a block of wood. Oh, dust out of there. I want to try to, well, I got to see what size block I got. Probably, if I got a it's probably easier to do this from a 1-inch block and carve it down. Now I try to picture the force here. The force is going to want to twist this, and the wing is not going to want to move. So probably our best bet is to get the grain going side to side. And that means I'll have to just cut it from a solid block. I've got a scrap block here that probably I won't have to waste a good piece of wood here. That's relatively good. And I'd like that, well, maybe I'll take it off this side. I'd like it to go side to side, make the block, and then cut this airfoil section into this side so I get at least 1 inch of filling this whole area in. Now if I'm real good about this, I can make this oversized to begin with, and I'll go maybe 1/64 of an inch oversize. And then what I want to do, boy, I'll tell you, when you lose things, Karen and I are having a contest to see who can lose the most things, and I think I'm winning. But what I want to do is, I want to make this block just a little bit oversized and then block sand it in. And I want the grain going side to side. And the idea here is to build some strength without adding unnecessary weight. And that's usually a good trick if you can do it. In fact, it's an excellent trick. Now I've got the block cut oversize, and I'm looking at how much I need to just dress off each side. Just the tiniest amount. I want that to be a relatively tight fit. I don't want to fill it with glue, I want to fill it with wood. Alright, I got the total length cut. That's the correct length. Now I need to, and it's a nice tight press fit, now I need to get this kerf out here, and I can get that, and I've got to even account for the fact there's a little dihedral in there to get a nice tight cut. I can pull that up off of my wing cutout template. The thing here, which I'm looking for the grain, I want the grain to be on the tight side of this. Sometimes making these little parts, even parts this small, I need to account for that little wing spacer we put there. And again, what I'll do is I'll remove this material. I'll probably have to carve it, in fact. I don't think I can, that's not going to fit in a jigsaw. Now I was able to get some of that off with the, just with the jigsaw, but I can't get the curve. And I'll try to, well, this is going to require a little bit of cut and fit. But the idea here is to get as good of a fit as I can, so we don't wind up with a big giant glob of glue that's not going to do us any good and just going to go along for the ride. And I'll see which one of my sanding, the little curved sanding, and I have a jar that has pretty much the edge of the wing on it. Let's see if we got that close. Anyway, I really want to thank John Cafaro's friends, and I have to check in with Arnie, who had a bunch of stuff that we were going to dispose of at a train show, and I think he still has it, but I'm not sure. I don't even remember what he has, to be honest. But it's better they should use it and wear it out than it just sits here. And that building really is nicely detailed. It really, and I'm going to try some various spots on a layout. I really need to make a permanent spot for it and do a little landscaping, get some trees and the different little things, truck backing up to it, that kind of thing. Well, it turns out the kicker bottle is as close as it gets. And we can get most of this off. And you know, the neat thing about the model railroad is many people, Michael Ferguson among others, Mike Kajeski, Mike Estella, they've all donated, Arnie Haber, all donated little things, and now John Cafaro's friends, of course. And I look at those things, they're little treasures, they're little things with special memories. And this is going to require just a little bit of extra sanding here, because I want this fit to be a minimum amount of glue and a maximum amount of just getting it to fit real good. And then what I'll have to do is draw a line down the middle and put a tiny amount of V in here, just so that it accounts for the V from the dihedral. But boy, very soon we're going to be doing the finishing and finishing up the fuselage, and when that time comes, as opposed to having a one-piece plane, we'll be saving a lot of time. Not a little bit, an awful lot. And in my case, I feel like we always make up the time and with a bonus at the end of it. But even so, even if it was a tie, it's more fun for me to build this way. And this is where it really gets difficult to get that final fit. We're close. I can see we just need to trim a little bit off here, maybe 3/16 of an inch, and we'll have it. Okay, with that piece trimmed back, it looks like we're real close now. Oh, we are super close. In fact, check out this fit. And that's going to be about as tight as it gets. But see, I haven't accounted for the dihedral. If I run my finger across it, this has a little high spot. I want to just take a little bit of material out of the middle, and that'll even make it a better fit. Now, I found out that to get this dihedral, this little angle in here, I just scored it. I just go from both sides, just so we don't have something, because this will act as a wing reinforcer too. Add some strength. Now, of course, the moment of truth here. Let's see how this really fits in here, and I'm sure it will. First thing is to get it in with thick CA, and then we'll soak the whole area with thin CA. He glues his finger. Look at this, I'm gluing my finger to the part. Just let it kick off without kicker. Now that really worked out great. That's a nice fit in there. Now I also want to get these corners triangulated, similar to what I have in the back. And I made up some extra pieces, again with the grain going corner to corner. And I guess these are going to have to be just a little bit, let's see, just a little bit smaller, but not by much. I want to connect it pretty close to where the other side is. But these, again, what we're doing, that grain going corner to corner is what we want to have. And the objective here is to connect corner to corner and reinforce it right behind the blind nut. Fill that area. In fact, first thing I'm going to do is put some oil on the two screws and set them in just the thickness of the blind nut, because once it's installed I can push the screw in, it won't matter. I don't want to get any of the CA running down into those blind nuts. That's just one drop of 3-in-1 oil. And I bring it out till it's just out the back of the blind nut, and I don't care. Once we have that piece in and it's glued in, it won't matter if you push that in a little more and put a little dent in the wood. But for right now, remember, this is exactly where the torque is going to be transmitted. So right here is where I want the triangulation. Okay, now once these are rough cut, the first thing I have to do is make sure I got the 90-degree angle real accurate, and I do, and then press this into the blind nut. I've got a real press in, and I guess you can see, but let's look. And if it picks up the impression of the blind nut, and I need to relieve that. Just take the Dremel tool and just take a little bit of material out of there. Now before we glue this in, I need to trim. It'll just be easier to trim it now, so it'll be relatively level, and then we'll have one gusset ready to put in. And now this is where I want to make sure I get plenty of glue, because when you do this, the triangulation with the grain corner to corner, it's almost end grain. Make sure I get the right side, get all the sides done. And of course, I'm going to squeeze it, get it to kick, and then soak every one of these joints with thin CA. It'll tend to fuel proof them. At the same time, anything's gonna wick into any little gap there still is. I don't think there's any gap in there, in fact. That's pretty good. Just run a sanding block over the top of this. Repeat this on the other side, and we're ready to move on to the next step. At least 2 or 3 coats of thin CA on this. And that's why I like to have the oil on the blind nut. And once we get the other side done, I think that's about as strong of a torque. Remember what's happening. If you know in your mind what's happening, what force you have to counteract, it's easy to figure out how to do any triangulation. You need to spread the load. You can't have the motor just hooked to 16th sheeting, or in this case 3/32 sheeting. Now with all the triangulation in, the last thing here is to true this up. So when we go to work on the bottom, we have a perfectly flat surface to work on. Now that worked out just as well as I could ever expect. And when we get back here in the shop, the next step is going to be to do the top. Now this afternoon we have some amazing weather as this day has unfolded into a bright sunny day, and it started out really terrible. It looks like I'll have a couple hours here, and then we're going to go do our walk. Oh, look at this day. Whew. We really appreciate it. It must be up to 40 degrees out there. Amazing. Just like New Orleans. The last time we got to work on this, it's almost a flying day out there. The next step, I got all the triangulation in on one side. I've got to flip this now. And I'm going to do this side in a very similar way to the way I did the other 90 ship. I'm not sure this is overkill. I'm not sure we couldn't just put 2 little braces in here and be done with it, but I'd feel better. I'd feel real better. The better of a grip I can get on the wing. The more of a grip I can get, it's that thing of sleeping well at night. Now I had the paint scuffed. Now on this side, because we're going to be going inside the fuselage, I need to go inside the doubler. So and the first thing I want to do is I want to make that 2 little, I guess, fake little fuselage sides out of, I have some real nice C-grain 1/8 inch balsa, and then I want to double it up in here. And I'm not sure. In other words, I've seen Casminato's plane where he doesn't have anything up here, but it's a smaller, he's dealing with a little less power. And these with bigger props, bigger torque. Don't forget the 90 has torque. More than horsepower, it's got that tremendous torque, especially if we're going to be using the big 4 blades and, well, big 2 blade, big anything. Big torque means big forces at play. Now this, we can cut this out and make a pattern out of this. This is the piece that got cut off the bottom of the wing. So I'll be able to use this as a rough pattern at first before I can even find a piece of wood to use. Now just making up a pattern from this piece, and that's why I save all these cutouts and all these little gizmo things. This will get me pretty close, because that's pretty much the shape that we need. Now that made a pretty nice pattern. I think we'll make it the full height, so I'll just add, I guess, 1/4 of an inch to that when I lay it out on the real piece of wood. Remember, this has to go inside the fuselage, not outside. And I put a little line on here to make sure these parts, had to put a little relief in for the blind nut. Now one of the things I've had a real problem with in the past, and this is really not funny, is whenever I'm using thin CA around this part in the construction, what has happened to me, and it's happened more than once, is I drip some thin CA in on a part thinking, oh great, that'll reinforce that, and it runs around the other side of the wing and makes a very difficult repair. So I'm trying to do as much of this with the thicker CA as I can. Now this piece has to fit inside the fuselage. When this goes in, it's going to be like a tongue and groove, and it gives us a place, a support when we pull test the plane, right up around here on both sides. Okay, this needed a little bit of a relief so it butts up against the wing. And actually, I don't need any more down there by the leading edge. That's pretty solid. But I need to take the impression of the blind nut, same as I did before, and I can see where that is. And just relieve this for where the blind nut impression is. And we get that relief in there. That should account for the blind nut. And of course, we can't find a knife. Goes without saying. And I think our reinforcements here have worked out pretty well. I mean, the idea here is to build a reinforcement but not add any extra unnecessary weight that's just going along for the ride, and I think we want to get as much of the structure right around where the blind nut is to widen that footprint. In my extensive engineering background and my college degree in engineering, as soon as that kicks, we'll do the other side and we'll have the top pretty much finalized. And we'll soak all these areas, soak this whole area in here with thin CA just to get a better bite. I had a few minutes here before we go out for our daily walk. I laid out where I want the lightning hole to be in this. There isn't enough room in the bottom to make a reasonable lightning hole, but I'm gonna really look at when the bottom is on here. Maybe I can get some air venting going through there. But right now, having this hole in here, this is just dead weight. That's going to be as strong. It's going from edge to edge. I always leave the perimeter of the box, and even in the bombers, those lightning holes didn't hurt anything. I'll just take a Dremel tool and Dremel them out. And once I cut that part, then I can finish it off with a sanding drum, get a nice edge, and then seal the whole inside of the edge with thin CA. And then with a sanding drum, I can clean that right up. Ah! Look at that! How cool is that? My sanding belt self-destructed. Look at this. Holy moly, baby. Good thing we didn't damage the wing. Maybe the lesson there is put a new sanding belt on once in a while. Excitement never ends. I'm sure that's happened to everybody. Interesting. Tip of the day. And boy, that thing I said about the saw blade with the little teeth, the Dremel tool, boy, that'll take your finger off. If that was that little saw blade, oh man. Anyway, we finished up for this session. We need to go out for our daily walk, and believe me when I tell you, it would always be easy to find an excuse not to walk. Some days Karen tells me, "Guy, you gotta get out," and someday I tell her, well, today we both don't want to walk. We're both lazy, but we got to do it. We got to stick with the program. That truly is another one of our milestone, I guess milestone issues, getting that done. And we really are happy that that is now done. Ready for just what basically from this point on will be the adding the blocks and cosmetic work. Now we don't have the canopies yet, but Dave has already had them molded, and they are somewhere in New Hampshire right now. He's planning on coming down in a couple of days, and I told him just bring them when you come down. So we're not ready for them yet today anyway, but it's a good feeling. Every time we get to one of these watershed moments, I like to take a little break and think back. Well, what I like to think back is, just like when these planes, every one of them was in some state of construction, and looking back at all those old days of building and all the shop days, all that Javalia coffee. But now there's one tricky thing on this that I don't know. I wanted to think about this while we're out walking. We need to put the edge around the wing in plywood, of course, and then we need to figure out, I need to kind of snap this together and see how I'm going to be able to put a fillet on this, because it's not as easy as you think it is. The wing is not in the scale location, and because it goes up, it's going to demand that we have a little more than normal clearance. Again, dihedral is the reason. It just isn't as simple, and of course on a real Spitfire the flaps never go up over the wing. So it's not a problem with a real Spitfire. But as I look back now, and the project is starting to evolve to where it's a real aeroplane, and every day when I look at it, it just gets more and more exciting to work on it. And it's been one, I can never go back and think of a better Christmas. Well, the Super Bowl, you've seen all that action. And what a year this is turning out to be. And all our friends have new houses and new cars and who knows what not. Now, if I only had my new Ducati, if somebody would just pop for $72,000, I'd be a happy boy. Off to the track. You may think we're making this up, but Karen froze how many pieces of that Mardi Gras cake?
4 pieces.
4 pieces in plastic bags. Put them in the freezer, and a mouse ate them. Now, I admit, I might have had 1 of them, but I didn't have 4.
Nope.
And she's laughing at me, see, because yesterday I lost the toner to the computer, to the printer, and I looked for an hour and couldn't find it, and she was laughing that I'm an old man and that I can't figure it out. I'm losing things, I'm losing my dentures, losing my wig. So now she has to pay. She lost the Mardi Gras.
Have a ghost in the house.
The mouse ate it, I'm telling you.
Wait, there were 4 huge pieces.
I know. When you get old, see, if you're not old yet, and if you make it, of course, one of the things you have to look forward to is you can never find anything. It's amazing. Totally amazing. How, you know what? You were laughing at me about the toner?
Yeah, well, God punished me.
God punished you. See, she can't find that cake.
Well, I'll look for it later. I want to go walk.
Well, let's walk because it's a reasonable day anyway. It's reasonable. You lost it. Don't lie to me.
You lost it. You ate it. You ate the whole cake.
If Midgley was here, I'd say we're guilty. But you know what? Or Bernie Trent, he's a pig too.
You ate it. That's what happened to it.
Bernie Trent played a surprise visit and ate the cake. Look at this. Hey, Wallbridge. We need some new pictures. We're getting sick of looking at your old pictures here. He's got a place of honor on the wall of Cardinals here. Unbelievable. We're going out to walk. She found it. Ah! Now, my son-in-law's dad is the real estate agent for this last piece of rental property we're selling. So what happened is we're gonna share a little bit of this cake with him, fatten him up a little bit.
Yeah, he's too skinny.
He is. Hey, birds. We need to walk, birds. Got to fill the feeder and then we're going out to walk. So I don't know if the squirrels are abandoning you or not.
Because I have my Giants hat?
I think the squirrels were all Patriot fans.
I hope not. I hope not.
I hope Bill Rutherford understands.
Oh, you know what? It's cold.
We still love him, even though he was rooting for Dallas. It's cold, baby. Put that hood up.
It was so warm this morning.
Yeah, we got faked out.
Oh.
Faked out. We're in Green Bay, baby.
Okay.
What's happening? Black clouds are coming over. In fact, we got a couple of raindrops here. Blue skies, rain coming. What weather, what weather. Unbelievable. I'm so glad we got that painting done. I see a black squirrel down at the other end of the field. We know how to make him our slave. We get him addicted to peanuts. There he is in a tree. Watch this. Come on. Peanuts. Come on. Come on, I'm taking you on my W-2 form. You must have something up there. He doesn't need me today. He needs me. Come on. Come on, not everybody has a pet black squirrel. I never even knew they made black squirrels. Come on. Come on. There we go. There we go. Who's your friend, Blackie? Who's your buddy? Tell me who your buddy is. It's Wendy. Wendy's an okay guy. I'm not sure they're going to let me, the IRS is going to let me deduct him on my income tax. Hey, you make a nice pocketbook for somebody, a nice Barbie doll pocketbook. Oh, we've been feeding him for about a year already. Look at what this cost me. Next thing you know, he'll want a Super Bowl hat. He'll want Bill Rutherford's subsistence program. He'll want giant posters. Hey, just because you're cute, don't take advantage of me. You're eating peanuts. And he will come and take them out of your hand. He knows. Many times he sits up on a fence here, giving us a hard time. Blackie, I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. Oh, it's getting cold now. Brutally. But you know what? He makes our walk a lot of fun. Every day we feed him, we see him. He's quite a character. There he is. He's coming to see us again. Oh, what a character this guy is. What a character.
Hey, Blackie.
You're costing me a fortune, Blackie. You're costing me a fortune. I'll never be able to afford that Ducati. What are we doing today, baby? 7? 10?
We'll see.
You're just gonna wear my sneakers
20,
out.
Maybe 20.
Oh, I'll tell you, when you do some kind of track walking and stuff, it's always great having a diversion like Blackie over here. Hey, hey, listen, you little guy. Listen. Come on. Come on. Come on, I'm calling the IRS. You got any children? Got any business deductions? Look at this guy. And we sit out here. It's actually cold today. This guy makes it all worthwhile. Hey. Every day. And we get to pass him. I don't know how many laps she wants to do today. Usually 7 to 10 laps. Okay, now where did he go now? Oh, there he is. He's over there.
Hey, this is it for me. Just me. This is it.
Okay. Come on. Hey, the IRS is going to find you. You'll be the only squirrel in debtor's prison.
There he is.
Isn't he cute?
There's the boy. He's probably...
Now see, he's high. He's high. I've got him so many peanuts today because our other squirrel isn't here. Oh, look, he's digging them. Hot diggity dog. What a guy. He makes my walking day complete. Come on, Blackie. Come on. Come on. I bet he'd like a piece of that New Orleans king cake. Piece of king cake? Hey. You want some king cake? Some king cake. There you go. King cake. King peanuts. Yeah, he's in Fat City. Make a nice paintbrush out of that tail. Nice squirrel hair. He doesn't want to hear about squirrel hair brushes at this point in time. Now in today's email we got some good, well, we got some phone calls too. Some pictures of Gerald Champ's four-cycle Thunderbolt here. Let me get the phone. So Gerald decided to put a 4-stroke in here. It looks like it just fits in a cowl too. Even though the 4-strokes are usually a little taller. Now this is, if I remember the email from a couple days ago, this is the second fuselage he's making for this. It's a Pat Johnson P-47. Yeah, that looks like that's going to be very, very realistic. That is nice. Needs that big 4-blader, baby. And my Typhoon used to run fine with the big 4-blade, if that's the way you want to go. I will look forward to seeing this as it evolves, that's for sure. Yeah, that really looks nice. So now you have a buck, since you have the other fuselage, I guess you have a buck you can use to make the shells. Assuming this has shells. It looks like it gets made similar to Al Raby's planes with molded shells. We're going to see this evolve. Gerald, take your time, do a great job. That looks good. Now these are some pictures of Mikey Palco's electric P51. Mikey, and by the way, didn't do this on purpose, but Mikey has, I made him up a 4-blade from Doran's molds so he could try and see if it would match up to this electric power well. And he hasn't painted the spinner because the real Miss Bardwell, remember the real Miss Bardwell, every prop blade was a different color, and he wants to make an authentic prop, which I think is going to be pretty cool. And he said the only thing left to do is buff out the gear doors and of course paint the spinner and prop. And we'll be looking forward to seeing this fly in the spring. And of course Mikey comes to all our local contests, so we'll get to see it. And it's a very good copy of the plane that Dan Banjock flies. I think it's a design by Bob Hunt, but modified by Dan Banjock, I'm sure, to a pipe plane, and then modified, of course, to an electric plane by Mikey Palco. Oh yeah, that looks sweet. That's sweet. Nice cockpit too. And if you go back and remember when Danny was building the original one, we made the mold for the cockpit, and we had Dave Midgley made the actual cockpits on his vacuum forming machine at Welch. And we should be getting our Spitfire cockpits, I hope, very soon. Nice lettering job. And that's a copy of for sure, a real plane. I've seen this one myself. It'll be interesting to see how this looks in the air. I'm sure this is going to look fantastic. And what a lot of masking. But when Danny did his P51, there was a lot of masking too. And from what I remember, this looks like a real close match of the yellow. And this is a picture from the recent show they had, that Circle Burner show. Everybody oohing and ahhing the plane. And we appreciate sharing the pictures from Mikey Palco. Another phone call. Boy, they won't let me live today. Unbelievable. Now speaking of Windy's Typhoon, this picture came in today from John Pothier. Notice who he's put in the cockpit. He's got a picture of me in the cockpit here. That's pretty cool, by the way. You know what, we ought to do a bogus thing. Send this into the magazine and don't tell anybody. See if they notice that I'm in the cockpit of my own plane here. How cool is that? Anyway, it's something John and I are working on. There's a picture of John Cafaro's dad with his... I still need to get more information. If these are the real Lionels. See the way that's smoking, that has the look of a Mike's Train House smoke unit. John's dad. And these are the real pre-World War II size, they call them standard gauge. Very cool, John, very cool. And from Rich Walbridge, Spitfire action. Now here, as we're sitting looking at this, see on a scale plane, see how that fillet comes out? Now, because our wing is thicker and it sits a little bit higher in the body, we really can, and because our flaps have to move up, we really wish we could do a totally scaled fillet, but that's really not happening. And we're going to have to improvise a little bit. And boy, every day, Rich, you make our day complete here. Even Karen has enjoyed looking at some of these pictures. And John Pothier, of course, is we're trying to doctor up one of these pictures. Now look at how small a real Spitfire flaps are, just as an example. Early model, small rudder, Malcolm hood, Merlin engine. Oh, there's my favorite, the counter rotator. Oh my God. And I still haven't decided on a color. Shame on me, but I'm sure Joe is considering this color. Oh man. Counter rotators. Hey, and this could be Joe and I out at Prodax with two matching ones. Now look at the one. Here's just an example. the top one with the full invasion stripes, upper and lower. The lower one only has the invasion stripes on the bottom, and both of those paint jobs are prototypical. Another thing to notice, look on the rudder how small the British red, white, and blue is. Usually that's a lot bigger on almost all the prototypical paint jobs. Two griffins. Oh man, that is nice. I like that lettering right in front at Rolls-Royce. That's very nice. 5-blade. Oh man. There's some good view here of, it's a 5-blader. I love how when they shoot pictures, how those 5 blades freeze in the frame. That is a DC-3 in the background here. Nice ground shot. I'm surprised how common or how popular this color is. I really am. The more that I'm getting into this, the more I'm liking this color too. And I know Joe's blue plane shows up in the sky beautifully. Nice shot. And it's that fillet area that I've been dreaming about lately, because I'm trying to come up with some way of making something similar to that, but obviously it's yet to be done. And we'll see what's going to evolve in the next couple of days. Anybody that's not a fan of Spitfires and ogives and double radiators and invasion stripes and counter-rotating props, the history of the Spitfire is, it just never ends. It really is one special plane, and Joe and I really have enjoyed modeling it. And I know Rich Walbridge has got his. He's ready for the shells. I'm going to have to mail him out the molds pretty soon. Never get sick of looking at these pictures. Oh, another counter-rotator here. That little chine scoop there. And we're going to try to incorporate as much of this as we can, but you never have too much inspiration. Let's see how big the red, white, and blue on the rudder is on this one. Oh, there's a Sea Fury in the back. Now look at this nose art up here. I know that's prototypical because I have pictures of this in the shop with the bee. So how unusual would that be if John Pothier just substituted the chickie nose art for that? And we'd probably convince some Brit that there was really a squadron of Baltimore Orioles in World War II. Yeah, 21T, that's the one that has the nose art. I have a picture of that in my shop. I got to go over there and look at it after we're done with the internet. Boy, these pictures are really, really special. They are really nice. Look at that. This must be in takeoff. Look at the right rudder this guy's kicking in here. Full right rudder. And this is something we'll be using very soon. As soon as we get those ready for the step of doing a cockpit. This is a blue seat. Now I know the blue is not the color of the war Spits. We're gonna have to figure it out. The yoke, the round yoke. Yes, how many Spitfires would you like, sir? Oh. There's the silver one with the red spinner. Oh, man. Absolutely fabulous. Absolutely fabulous from Rich Walbridge. Yeah, on 21T, just substitute this. That is really cool. Now how cool is this? Here's 21T, right in the shop. 21T, right under my Spitfire, of course, and right under another Spitfire, and right under Rich Walbridge's plane. Oh, 21T. Kind of cool nose art too. Well, we're at the end of this DVD, and I really hope that you've enjoyed it. Please share it with all your friends. And I've got the body in here and the wing attached, and I'm getting ready to lay out the filleting area on the next tape. And we hope you'll join us then.
That's the story of, that's the glory of love. The path across the way. The children's carousel. The chestnut trees. The wishing well. I'll be seeing you in every lovely summer's day.